Now we're going to invite Timon to the stage from SETUP, and he's going to talk for a little while, and then we have our final speaker of the evening, Duncan Speakman, and then we're going to pray for sunshine, so that we can definitely play our game. But anyways, take it away, Timon.
Thank you very much. All right, hi everyone. My name is Timon Schep. I work at the Medialab SETUP in Utrecht. What the hell is a Medialab? It's a cultural organization that explores how new technologies and society mix and merge, and what happens in that space, and what kind of issues we have, what kind of possibilities there are. These things we have to explore as a people, I think. And for us, this is a very important thing. Like Brakke Grond, he says, technology isn't interesting when it's new, it's interesting when it's everywhere. So as a lab, the technology that we're interested in is not the newest stuff from the lab, like the labs in Eindhoven and all the hip technology places. It's things like our smartphone, which we all have, and it's suddenly everywhere, and we're like, what do we do with that? And it's my job as creative leader SETUP to always look at the newest technologies that are everywhere. But something that happened 2 years or a couple of years ago that suddenly made this thing everywhere, which was surveillance technology, was suddenly something that we could all, as a community, talk about. Everyone could talk about it and had an opinion on it and could form it. So we were like, yes, awesome. So we've been diving into these issues of surveillance and privacy control for the past year and this year as well. And we're doing a lot of projects. And one of the projects that we're currently doing and that I'm talking about to you tonight is the Urban Nudging Kit, or the Urban Nudging Toolkit. And it's a kit that we use to hack neighborhoods. But I'll get into that in a little bit. First, let's go into a little bit why we made it, so you can understand then the thing that we made. So it started with this idea that this year we're researching the control society. But we're not researching this vision that a lot of people have. Sorry, Richard.
That's a Bolshevik. You should have heard. You didn't listen to the talk, did you?
Anyway, people have these visions of top-down regimes suppressing people. These kinds of ideas of, maybe you've seen this movie, They Live. It's a great movie about, watch the movie, you'll understand. And of course, James Bond kind of movie. You get this feeling like these control societies are these big organizations at the top, and they're controlling things made from the shadows. But our point to explore is that it's a lot more subtle now, the control society, than these old images that we have. And also, we're part of it. We're doing it ourselves as well. We're complicit. And I think the most interesting thing that I've found this year that we're talking about is this idea of behavior design. And that's becoming like a serious design form now. And, think about that for a second. So designing behavior is a thing. And that's made possible, or that's always been a thing. Like, we've always tried to influence people's behavior and stuff like that. We all had marketing and advertising. That's all old. It's not new. But we're getting really good at it. We're starting to weaponize marketing, you could say. And that's, first of all, because we've got this thing called big data. And we just have so much data on people's behavior now, and how they move and what they do. And they say one thing, but they do another thing, and then that's what you really want. So that's the thing that really happened. And that's really given people a lot of power. Like, Obama has been able to get his second term as a president, partially because he's been so good at pinpointing the few people who weren't quite sure who they would vote for. And then he was like, I'm going to talk to those people exactly because I know who they are, I know what job they have. And then he sent his people to them, and that tipped him over the edge. So big data is becoming very important and a very powerful thing to influence and manipulate these kind of systems. The second really big thing is the rise of the knowledge of how we think and what we do and why. So psychology and neuroscience have really given us a lot of insight in the last couple of decades into our biases and things that we really want. And these are some books that I recommend, or that are really interesting to me. Nudge has already been mentioned today as this book that's really popular with politicians about how you can influence your design, how you can make people make the right decision that's best for them. Of course, who decides what's best for them are the politicians, but that's something I'll get into in a second. This one's really freaky. This is Addiction by Design. It's a book that talks about how casinos are being designed to be extremely good at keeping you there, and how that's a form of behavior design. look them up. And of course, we already talked about this one, right? That's the nudge that everyone knows. It's the thing that subconsciously, makes you do the right thing, which is not pee on the floor. And we find this kind of crazy and interesting because we see a lot of politicians being interested in this. We saw Obama. We see a lot of companies being interested in this, in nudging you. Like maybe you remember Facebook manipulating your emotional state last year, trying to experiment with that. So that's some big, interesting companies are doing stuff. We were like, can we do this as a people, as citizens? Can we nudge back? Can we explore this technology? Can we design behavior? So we thought we'd do this project in which we try to have normal people design behavior and try to not only teach them how to do that, but of course in the process tell them that this exists in the first place, that this is a thing. You can design behavior and people are doing it to you. And for us it started with this wonderful project by Roosmarijn van Gouw, an artist who studied at the Rietveld Academy. And this was her graduation work here in Amsterdam, yeah. And this is at the Leidseplein. She drew these lines on the floor, and what she noticed, what she tried to get at was that people would kind of subconsciously, it's always very subtle, subconsciously park their bikes in these spaces, and they're kind of create these kind of flowers of bikes, as it were. It's really, really beautiful when you think about it. So this is the party night, people were just doing that, and she takes it away. And when I saw this, like, oh, wow, that's a great example, and this is interesting. So this is an example of this behavior design in an urban context. So we started to explore this idea. Can we do this behavior design in an urban context? What would happen? It's something that everyone can do. We all have an urban context. Could we try that? And actually, wow, I'm really going fast. That's great. So the first artist that we already mentioned was Roosmarijn van Gouw. We hope that she will join us in creating this toolkit for normal people to nudge their neighborhoods. Brakke is another really great artist from Utrecht who already works with the Fietsersbond, the bicycle association, thank you. So she already is interested in that, so she's working with us on that. And we also found Circus Engelbrecht, also a pretty well-known artist from Amsterdam called Martijn Engelbrecht in there. And Lint Landschapontwerpers, which are some really nice landscape designers with a little bit of a naughty twist who work in Utrecht. And we've all asked them to create nudges in the urban environment around bicycling, because what's more Dutch and than that? And Holland's a great place to experiment with bicycling and getting people to behave when they're bicycling. So we're in the middle of designing this toolkit. It's not done yet. We've had the bottom two clubs already try to do something, experimenting with it now. And Brakke and Roosmarijn will hopefully do it later. And we've also had another kind of like sudden experiment by Duncan, which he'll talk about after I'm done, if I'm correct. So let's start with Circus Engelbrecht, what they did. They came to us with like a large amount of ideas, and so they want to try lots of small things and kind of explore it. I mean, it's their prerogative, they're artists. So I'm going to show you three things that they did. The first one, they created a bicycle parking committee. And they wanted to kind of just be in the face of these bicycle people, and in your face, and really provoke them into parking their bike better by just hanging around. If you see someone with a bicycle parking committee, you might think like, I might park nicer today. So they tried to do that, and people didn't like that. People were really upset by these guys being there, and they were really like, fuck you! You don't tell me how to park my bike. So that kind of wasn't as subtle as these things should be, but it works in a sense. Another thing they tried was to have 4 people walk around the street as blind people, and see if the bicycle people would change their behavior around them. Not really. Yeah, that was difficult. Yeah. And the last thing they did was was very subtle, so that was great, but it turned out to be too subtle. They thought if they would glue tacks to the floor, that people would think, oh, there's tacks on the floor, and I better not park my bike there because I might get a puncture. So they put those on the floor, super glued them to the street, people still park their bike there. Another idea that they had was to use fake bird shit and put that on displays where you wouldn't want bikes. But that also didn't really work, because then people would get it on their shoes and it would go everywhere. So it's a work in progress. But yeah, that's the first line of experiments that they did. The second one, Lint Landschap-ontwerpers, they're just starting up now. And this is what they're currently experimenting with the first bits. And this is what they proposed. They said, what we're going to do, what they've already done, is we're going to measure how, we're not going to influence the bikers. Well, we are, but we're not going to focus on them. We're going to focus on the people who walk. And we're going to measure how they walk and the patterns that they walk on the streets. And we're going to measure that. And then we're going to put those patterns back on the street, so the people who bike there will be able to kind of anticipate where people will cross the road, and how these informal patterns of usage of the street by these pedestrians, how those work. And hopefully we'll be able to avoid the pedestrians better that way. Who knows, it might work. So this is what they tried at their own office so far. So this is all that we have right now. This is something they tried today. So trying to make these patterns. I'm very curious how that will look if you get these nice like knitting patterns on the street. So that's to be continued. And that's all that I have right now. And yeah, it's a kind of work in progress, as I said. And I hope, yeah, to
That's great.
be able to give you more later.
Thank you.